So we are back, and today we are talking all things driver spin. So if you're someone who thinks that you spin the driver way too much, then stay tuned because this is a video for you where we're going to be taking a look at what creates the spin and exactly how to change it. Right, so first up, let's kind of touch on what creates the spin. What are we going to look at in terms of the delivery that create that high spin? So I'm going to try and hit you one. That's pretty neutral, I'd say. Nice little fade, if anything. Yep, pretty happy with that. Right, so let's take a look at some of the variables in that delivery and discuss what we're going to look at when we're looking at what's going to create that spin. Okay, so pretty happy with that one. Trying to be as neutral as possible for this example. Path is 0.3 into out, and then the face to path 0.6 close. So pretty damn neutral. And we can see the strike is pretty damn good as well. But maybe slightly heel side, but I'm not going to grumble at that. So within this example, what we're really going to be looking at, because the face to path was so neutral, it's this diagram down here. Now what this diagram is going to be telling us is spin loft. So the spin loft is the difference between the delivered loft at impact, also known as dynamic loft, which in this example was 19.8. We'll call that 20. So I delivered 20 degrees of loft at impact, and the angle of attack, which on this one was 5.3 up. So we'll call that 5. So we've got 20 loft, 5 degrees up. So that's a difference of 15. So when we're hitting it up, it closes the spin loft gap. If that was 5 degrees down, that would widen that gap to 25. Because we're hitting up, it narrows that gap to 15. So 20 loft, 5 angle attack, 15 spin loft, which is generally pretty good. It's like in the middle of what would be an acceptable spin loft window. So you can see that I launched that at 13 and backspin was 2338, so call that 2300. So pretty damn good numbers really. So if we started to close that gap even more and get lower down towards the sort of 11, 12 mark, it would be, that would be getting a little bit low. And then if that spin loft gap widen, then obviously that's going to start to really increase that launch and spin. So a lot of the times it's going to be based on people delivering too much dynamic loft. Generally speaking is what I would see, way too much loft at impact, and that's what's going to create that really high launch, high spin ball flight. But there are some other variables as well. So what happens if I hit a big old fade? Well, let's find out. That was horrendous, but actually will give me another good point to make. I mean, it's actually I'm not going to grumble at that drive. Ended up 288 in the fairway. But there's going to be a few other little bits and bobs going on within this that we're going to dive into now to take a look at. Okay, so we'll look at those numbers straight off the bat and we'll go, well, 9 degrees launch, 3,500 backspin. Like, wow, that's very different to the last one there. And yes, it was a completely different delivery. We can see I was 5.6 out to in, so essentially 5.6 degrees coming left on the ball at impact, and face was about 1 degree open. So that's obviously more of a fade delivery. We're coming across the ball, and the face is marginally open to the path. So that is going to create a slight fade. However, the biggest variable in that one there is going to be a low strike. I'm quite glad I hit that low because it gives me a good example to talk about another variable that's going to really, really change launch and spin, and that is strike. So the biggest reason that I launched lower and span higher was the strike. Because if we actually look at the spin loft, we're now at 18 degrees and we hit 2.4 up. So we're going to call that 16, basically. 16 spin loft. So actually not that different to the previous one. The launch and spin is massively different, which is mainly strike. And that is really how much that strike can affect that launch and spin. And I lost, I don't even know what that is, 20 plus yards of carry. Even probably, I didn't look at the ball speed of the last one, but probably at somewhat similar ball speed, just because those launch conditions are so much worse. Why do you always want to be stood next to me? Come on, pop to bed. P, bed. See if we can get a slightly better example of a fade. That's pretty good. Okay, good efficiency, felt good. 276 carry, looked super floaty. That's another thing to bear in mind, like what are you going to be looking for? Yeah, 3,500 spin. One of the telltale signs, obviously, you do have a spinny ball flight is backspin creates lift. So obviously if you see your ball flight kind of starting to climb and just kind of floating, almost look like it's coming back on itself, so you know you get a pretty spinny ball flight. Right, let's take a little look at this one. Again, it was 5mm low, which I know it looks like a pretty good strike. And you wouldn't be completely unhappy with that, but 5mm is enough to make a reasonable difference, to be honest. It sounds crazy, but it is. But we'll go with it because I don't want to stand in there all day hitting shots. So 3.5 up and 21 loft. So we already know that that's going to be way too wide. So if we call it, yeah, 21 and 3, I mean, yeah, that's right at the top end of that spin loft gap. So that is going to create too much spin. Now, combined with the fact that we're obviously cutting across it with the face open to path and with a slightly low strike, all of those things kind of compounding means launching a nice window, that's fine, 3,500 spin. Way too much, way too much. So if this is your delivery and the reality is you play with a little bit of a fade and your angle of attack is somewhere in that range, 3 to 4, right, which is actually quite nice, you would just need a much lower lofted driver, because really we need to try and get that loft down as much as possible in order to bring that backspin down. Now there is going to be a balance there, because if we crank that loft really low, obviously the launch is going to come down with it, creating a too low a launch. That's fitting, basically, finding that sweet spot for you. So now I'm going to try and hit you a nice little draw. It was a little low in the head, but it is a nice little draw. Even that, with it being a little low in the head, it's still, ball flight was completely different, way more forward. Yeah, 24.63 backspin with a pretty similar strike. If anything, it was actually a little bit lower in the face. Okay, so let's look at those variables. Again, strike similar, if anything slightly lower in the face, which will increase that spin as we've spoken about. However, now the delivery is completely different. We're coming from the inside with the face closed relative to the path. So the loft comes down slightly, but not loads in fairness, but a little bit. But the angle of attack goes way up, and that's something that path and angle of attack tend to be very, very linked. So obviously if we're coming more sort of over the top, as it used to be known, kind of, sort of, not necessarily, but over the top, down and left versus up and right. So I've moved my path inside, which has created more of an up and angle of attack, closing that spin loft gap. And it's just a stronger delivery in general. Again, this spin loft is only 2 dimensions. This definitely comes into it as well. And there's a lot more that we probably couldn't measure that comes into it, but it's about as complicated as I need to make it. So yeah, hitting more up and slightly less loft, really narrowing that spin loft gap to that kind of 6 and 19, sort of 19, 20. So yeah, 13, 14 spin loft. So that's quite a nice spin loft. So although we struck it in the bottom of the head, we actually got pretty nice launch conditions and 25 yards more carry. So you can come at it from that angle, or you can just buy a different driver. So which one's better? Depends how much time you've got to put in, I suppose. Okay, so that's coming at it kind of like more from a coaching perspective, I guess, in terms of what is spin loft, what variables affect it, and how you want to go about changing that. I mean, it's going to completely depend on your scenario. Obviously, if you're massively out to in, hitting down on the ball and creating a massive high spin, slicey ball flight, then obviously, yes, you're going to want to go and get lessons, right? I would, in that scenario, say don't waste your money on a driver right now, go and get lessons and sort that out. Whereas if you're someone who's actually a pretty decent golfer, deliver it pretty neutral, but just to delivering too much dynamic loft, and you don't really want to change too much in your swing, then obviously we can just look at the driver head. Head mainly, not shaft, head. So that I was hitting there was a Stealth 2 plus 10.5, which is a head I've kind of been dabbling with a little bit recently. So what we've got now is a Stealth 2 10.5, not the plus, the standard Stealth 2 10.5. So let's hit one. That felt pretty good. It's gone very high. Go on, path. Yeah, so strike was great, really, really good. 144 efficiency. Not going to grumble at that. I mean, very, very marginally low. But the main thing we're looking at there, face to path, great, really neutral. 6.4 degrees angle of attack up, so we're nicely hitting up on it, quite a lot. Delivered loft, 23. So just too much dynamic loft. But swing was good, strike was good, everything's pretty good. Assuming I'm a reasonably good player, not. But so assuming I was fitting a reasonably good player, go well, obviously that head design, it's too high spin, and the loft is too high. So let's just change that head over. So yeah, that launch, obviously, and spin on that one, launched at 16, backspin 3,300. So too much launch, too much spin. Ball speed of 168 mile an hour, 278 carry is not great. So going from the standard Stealth 2 at 10.5 into the Stealth 2 Plus at 9 degrees. So obviously the lower spinning head at 9 degrees. Let's give it a hit. That felt pretty good. 300 carry, 2-2 spin. There's actually a little bit of a fade. So there we go, 14 launch, 2200 backspin. Pretty damn good that. Again, the strike was probably slightly better, if anything, than the previous one, which would have affected spin a little bit, in all fairness, but still, the example, we got the loft down to 20, angle of attack at 5.4 up, which is generally where I'm at, kind of 5, 6-ish up. So again, closing that spin loft window back into the sort of 15, 14 and a half, 15 range, which is good. Again, really nice neutral face to path, decent strike with that lower spinning head, bringing that dynamic loft down, creating that better spin loft gap with the neutral launch condition. So you go from a decent golfer who's carrying it kind of 278, quick change of the head, similar kind of characteristics in the delivery, but now up at 301 carry with, again, same ball speed. So just that little change of the head can make a big, big difference. So there we have it, just a quick little dive into kind of driver spin on the whole, really. I kind of hope that made sense to a lot of you. I hope that I kind of touched on things in enough detail. If you have any questions, please pop them down below. And yeah, I mean, I think this is a good example of why coming for a fit-in is good value as well, just because you're going to learn all of this about your swing if you don't know. So therefore we can advise and go, yeah, you know, a quick little driver change, you're going to gain 20 yards, or actually maybe now's not the right time to be changing the driver. You need to go and have some lessons and change some things within the delivery, and that's what's really going to benefit you. So yeah, hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something. Please do post any comments below. If you want to know anything, let me know what you want to see again. Always open to good ideas for videos. Please do like and subscribe and stay tuned because I'm going to be keeping it coming from now on. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.